Sevastopol is a legendary tier Soviet heavy cruiser. You might even say super heavy cruiser, and it's one of two ships you can pick for the reward upon completing the free December 2025 campaign. The other choice is, of course, the American battleship Rhode Island, which we covered yesterday. And I think it's kind of interesting that Rhode Island and Sevastopol are the two alternatives, because with Rhode Island, what you have is a battleship with relatively small guns. For its tier, at least, they are battleship caliber guns. But then, on the other hand, what you have with Sevastopol is a cruiser with really big guns. True battleship caliber guns, in fact. These are 380 millimeter guns on the Sevastopol, and that's probably one of its two most unique calling cards, let's say. We'll cover both of those, but before we really get into explaining the details about the ship, I should show you my commander build. And as always, with these campaign ships, I'm testing out free-to-play commander builds to make sure that these ships work well with them. Now, I've got Makarov running. You could, of course, use Kuznetsov, but my thinking on Makarov, and you can see his two inspirations are Kuznetsov and Makawa, my thinking here is the ingenious skill in the first row of skills. It allows you to see how many ships are aiming at you, which is nice, but the thing that it does that I find more valuable is it reduces the turret traverse time. And maybe you don't need to worry too much about the turret traverse time on the Sevastopol. It's got a base of 36 seconds, but when it comes to these super heavy cruisers, I'm more inclined to use the sort of survivability archetype commander that Sevastopol represents, rather than the more DPM-focused commander that Kuznetsov would represent. I think this thing would work with either of them, though. Although if I had my pick, I'd probably be using one of the paid Soviet commanders, and I'll probably do that at a later time, just like I will with the Rhode Island. But I think Ivan B. Delightful is probably going to be pretty great on this ship. Now, as we get into position here, you can see we've done some decent damage against Yamato so far. And if you look at our HP, we have a large HP pool. It's 62,600. And as for the armor, it does have a tiny section of both bow and stern plating that's overmatchable, 25 millimeters, and there is no icebreaker. So if you're bow on to anything, it will go right through the bow. However, the upper belt plating and the deck armor are 30 millimeters. That's enough to protect you from a lot, although things like Yamato, for example, can overmatch that. But the lower belt armor is thick enough to bounce any battleship caliber guns, and much like most Soviet ships, this thing has a citadel that looks like it's pretty easy to hit. It's not massively above the waterline like a lot of Russian... What is that Khabarovsk doing? Running face first into a Minigumo? Sad. Anyway, not to get distracted by the blue team, but it is a hittable citadel, and you don't want to give flat broadside in it. Otherwise, I think you're going to get wrecked. But with 62,600 HP... the armor scheme it has, and then the repair party, this thing is pretty survivable. This repair party is unique, too. It lasts for 60 seconds, and you'll see that when we deploy it. We're going to use, I think, all 4 of them in this battle. But it goes for 60 seconds, which is an incredibly long time, and it restores 312 HP per second. You could think of it as a slow-motion super heal. It does have a very lengthy reload time, though, at 116.4 seconds, which is nearly 2 minutes. So you're going to be waiting a while after you deploy the first heal, but with it, you can restore a tremendous amount of HP, and that'll become clear to you as this battle progresses. Now, the main battery guns, which we've been shooting at the Yamato and now we'll shoot at the Michelangelo, they are 6 380mm or 15-inch guns, and if you take a close look at the turrets, they start to look awfully German. And then if you look at the alpha numbers on the AP, for example, that looks pretty German too. The individual AP shell alpha for Sevastopol is 11,300, and that sounds almost like a Tier 7 German battleship with 15-inch guns. They also have somewhat improved pen angles, it seems. Minimum ricochet angle is 50 degrees, guaranteed ricochet angle is 65 degrees, so that's kind of nice to see. And the fuse timer is 0.022 seconds, which I think means it's short fused. And as you can see there against the Michelangelo, because these are 15-inch guns with good pen, battleship caliber guns, they are very harsh toward cruisers and toward broadside battleships for that matter, which hopefully we'll see as this game progresses. These guns have a reload of 19.8 seconds with this build. We are running the reload mod, but the base reload is 22 seconds. Weirdly enough, the same base reload time as the Rhode Island. What did I tell you yesterday about there are cruisers in this game with the same reload time as that battleship? The guns, as you might have noticed too here against the Minagumo and some of the other shots we've taken, are really, really accurate. They've got a sigma value of 2.05, and I almost think you can't get much higher than that. And then all of the dispersion numbers are under 100 meters, except for the max range horizontal dispersion, which tops out at 139.1. So these are exceptionally accurate guns for a cruiser, and I don't think you'll feel too much like you've got that six-gun syndrome. Well, I take that back. You're going to feel like you have that six-gun syndrome every now and then when you get results like we did against the Michelangelo. These guns might be really accurate, but RNG is always going to be a thing, so you're never going to get laser-accurate pinpoint consistency in every single salvo you shoot. But overall, these guns feel really nice, and I'm happy to report that because usually with these kind of super heavy cruisers with large guns, you don't get accuracy like that. Think Kronstadt, for example, which I cannot stand to play because of the lack of its accuracy. This thing is nowhere near that. It is much more enjoyable to play, and the guns feel great, honestly. The thing has secondaries as well, which I've been in some sort of close-range brawling positions for them to shoot, and they do seem to light a lot of fires, although I don't think you should build into them. As for the AA, couldn't really tell you. I don't think it's that great. It's only got 2 sets of AA guns. The maximum damage that they do is 350 average DPS per second, and that's with the 4-kilometer AA, which is, I think, the more useless AA, so probably not great. Maneuverability, you wouldn't expect it to be too good on something like this. 33.5 knot maximum speed, 980 meter turning circle. That's larger than the Rhode Islands for context. 14.5 second rudder shift, also larger than the Rhode Islands. I'm not sure what we're doing to the rudder shift though. The base is 15.1 seconds. We've got it at 14.5. And then the concealment with the concealment mod and Mikawa as an inspiration is 11.8. Not fantastic concealment for a cruiser by any stretch of the imagination, but on something this large and with this much armor, pretty good. So I'd say, it's a pretty decent ship. And I should also mention, too, it has more consumables than just that slow motion super heal. Oh boy, Michelangelo, is this a good idea? Nope. That's 2 citadels right there. And wait, hold that thought before we get into the sonar and the other consumables, because if I remember correctly, the blue team is not in a great position here. Everybody that's alive except the cruiser on the other side of the map, South Alpha, is over here, and the red team has 2 caps. But Yamato, broadside, well, there he goes. You can see what I mean about how powerful these guns are. You need to respect them. They are true battleship caliber guns, and if you give broadside to them in your battleship like the Yamato, well, you can expect them to be accurately hitting your citadel and sending you back to port. Anyway, on to the rest of the consumables. We have sonar in the first consumable slot. It's got a torpedo acquisition range of 3.1, ship acquisition range of 4.4. You can trade it out for DFAA, but I don't know why you ever would, because DFAA is only going to be useful, and I say that in scare quotes, in matches where CVs are present. Sonar is going to be useful in practically every single match you play, so I would go with that. We've already talked about the repair party, but then we get a rather unique engine boost. 3 charges of it, with I think the fully packed skill. It might come with only 2 base, but this engine boost provides you a 20% maximum speed buff. although it only lasts for 45 seconds. So I guess the main purpose is to give yourself a burst of speed if you need to quickly reposition or retreat, perhaps. I don't know what we're doing here trying to take blind fires at the Shimakaze. It's not going to work. But thanks to our efforts against the Michelangelo and the Yamato, along with this friendly battleship here, we are now in a position where it's a 3v3, and we actually have a chance of making a bit of a comeback here with the I almost said Siegfried, the Sevastopol, which is why I wanted to show you this game for the review of the ship. Shimakaze out there, as you might have guessed, one of the sort of downsides of a cruiser design like this is it's not all that equipped to deal with destroyers, at least not any more than a typical battleship with sonar would be, except in one sense, which is that it has better maneuverability than most of the battleships out there, and so it's maybe a little bit easier to dodge torpedoes if you turn early enough to avoid one hitting your bow like that. However, I will say, you saw that Shima Torp did, 11k to us? This thing does actually have 34% torpedo damage reduction, and I might be wrong about this, but I feel like that's one of the highest values I've seen on any cruiser. It's higher than some battleships. Still, you don't want to be taking torpedoes, and in this battle, what we're trying to do here is sort of zone the Shimakaze away from the friendly battleship, who, as you can see, has turned to face the last remaining enemy battleship. I believe that battleship is the Yamato, and these guys are sort of gonna cancel each other out by sitting bow on to each other. And if I'm not totally mistaken, and I don't know why this is, but I've seen it literally every day this week on the update. But I think that Yamato out there, I think he might be shooting HE for the majority of the battle. And I've seen so many Yamatos doing that over this week, I don't get it. Note, if you are a Yamato owner, or if you're the happy new owner of the Aki that dropped from a crate, or even the Musashi, there is no reason whatsoever that you would ever shoot HE out of those ships. You have 18-inch guns that can overmatch 32. No justification for it ever. Just wanted to get that out there as a public service announcement for all of you. But anyway, we want to keep the Shimakaze away from the friendly battleship. If we put ourselves between him and that battleship, maybe he'll send his torpedoes at us like he did there, and we're able to avoid. And because he's somewhere in this area of the map, and we've got that one skill on Makarov that gives us the RPF indicator, we know generally where he is. So we've missed the torpedoes already. He sent them at the friendly battleship. They're not working. This Shimakaze, you can tell he's got a functioning brain too. He's doing like very intelligent things that you wouldn't necessarily expect from the average Shima. He's shooting at the friendly battleship from a position where I'm not even able to see him. I can't quite tell if he's in open water. If he is, I'm outside of his main battery gun range, so I'm not able to see him, and I think that's the second or third time he's actually done something like that. So I just want to compliment that, because it's always nice to see a bit of a Chad Shima around there. Also, we should talk about the HE on these guns. I talked a lot about the AP, but not about the HE, mostly because since these are 15-inch guns, you're probably going to be shooting AP the majority of the time. But the HE, I don't know, it feels questionable to me. The individual shell alpha is 5,350. It's got a 34% fire chance, and I think this is just a poor roll of the dice here against Yamato. Obviously, we're shooting the HE at him because he's bow on to us, and I suppose we could aim for the superstructure with the AP and deal some damage there. But, you know, stacking dots with fires I think is preferable in a situation like that. However, no fires whatsoever. That I think is a bit of a fluke. I've shot the HE before. 34% fire chance again, and, you know, it lights fires. It just didn't in this battle. We didn't get any help from RNGesus, I guess. And the battle's about to be over, thanks to sinking the ships on our flank, and also thanks to the cruiser over near Alpha for playing really well, surviving up until this point, and defeating the ships over there. This is a bit of a comeback for the blue team. And I think that cruiser might be the Jinan, who is going to get like 3,000 base XP and be on top of the leaderboard. followed by me. So GG to him as well. Shimakaze torpedoes incoming. Too little too late. 3 seconds left to go in the battle. They're not even going to hit us. And that's it for the Sevastopol. So this is basically a ultra heavy cruiser, sort of a battleship with all the benefits of a cruiser hull. And I think it's actually pretty good. I wasn't expecting it to be all that great, but I really don't think you can go wrong between this and the Rhode Island. It just depends on what you prefer, I suppose. Personally, I would pick the Rhode Island, but I could totally see why somebody would want to pick this ship up. 15-inch guns, accurate 15-inch guns on a cruiser. It's pretty appealing. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.